All right, well, this time I'd like to welcome in my guest for today. Spencer Holt is joining the show. Spencer, welcome in.
Ryan, thank you. I am so excited and honored to be here today.
Well, it's good to have you. For those that don't know, Spencer and I go a ways back. We used to play sports against each other, mainly football. He played basketball. I didn't play basketball in high school, but we played football against each other. And then we both moved our small families to Las Vegas to pursue scholarly and early career kind of stuff there. And I stayed in Vegas, and he went on to do some great things and move to some cool places. And so he kind of went one way, and I stayed in Vegas for a long time. But so we've had some connections on and off throughout the years, and I thought it'd be good to bring him on the show. And so thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. That was a little bit down memory lane there. It's like,
Yes.
wow, we did like when we moved to Vegas. Because remember, I think we had like that little that apartment complex, and there was a tennis court there, and we would play tennis in the morning while when our kids were waking up, and yeah, that was some. Wow, you brought me back there, Ryan.
Right.
Well done.
Well, those are some simpler times, and maybe some easier, less complicated times, even though maybe it felt a little stressful just trying to, being in place, going to school, and like I said, having a young family and stuff, but it was still some good times for sure. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So anyway, so I brought Spencer on today to talk about some of his work that he's doing. He's doing a lot of great work in his own profession. And I believe it's an article and kind of a concept that you recently wrote about your journey to awesome. Is that kind of like the
Yeah,
gist of it?
sure. I'd love to share just a little about it. So in my work, I do a lot around learning development and leadership. And so I do a lot in terms of like, how do you help people find not just what they're good at and what they're passionate about, but how do we help them find purpose? And then also, Ryan, and you probably see this a lot, it feels like there are so many people that are afraid to be awesome. Like that word is kind of like so far out there, it doesn't apply to me. And so in my work, I do a lot of big program development for individuals and leaders, but then I also do a lot of individual coaching. This article came about from saying, how do we help every person recognize that they have the ability to be awesome? And that there's a journey in that. Like, you don't start out that way, but if you're intentional in who you're trying to become, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that everybody has it. And it's, I think, helping people recognize that. So that's kind of the premise of the article and why I called it Journey to Awesome.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes when people hear the word awesome initially, it's like, oh, awesome. They're like, that's cool or whatever. But there is a sense of like really feeling, that we can be awesome. And one of the things I took from the article, I just kind of draw from it. It says, you said every person has unique gifts and strengths and has the ability to be wonderful, impressive, and inspire others. And I love that, because I just think sometimes we underestimate ourselves in terms of the potential we have, in terms of what we can accomplish. And that doesn't mean that we're going to all do it in the same way. And I think we live in a culture of comparison, and we're always kind of looking to see what the bigger or badder, whatever person is doing. But it's like when we look at those and we focus on those things within ourselves, we have that ability, for ourselves to do that in whatever way. It might be on a small scale, it could be on a big scale. Each of us have our own opportunities, but I really love that in the sense of just, if we can focus on that, I think that that's one of the starting points to being awesome, like you say.
It's so true. And a lot of, I think, work that I'll do with individuals is just what you say is like, let's almost like hit the pause button so that we're not comparing to other people, but to say, what are you really good at? Like, what are some unique strengths that you have? And and sometimes people will actually make the confusion of, well, I'm passionate about this. And like as an example, like so I'm passionate about, one day I would love to be in a musical. I can't sing. And like, so if I decided to try to pursue that passion, I would go hungry. My family would go hungry. And so it's about understanding, like, just because you're passionate about something, that might not mean that you're good at it. And so it's about saying, where can I find the sweet spot of what I'm passionate about, what I'm really good at? And then also, what does the world need? What does the organization I work for need? And when you can kind of, I think, pause and write those things down and think about them, it helps you get on that path of, how do I help accomplish my purpose? which is combining my unique set of skills, my strengths, and my passions in a way that makes sense, that can also be rewarded inside and outside of an organization, but that helps you feel really good about what you're doing. And that, to your point earlier, I'm not worried about it doesn't look the same as so and so on Instagram, or the way that, somebody else does it. It's not about the comparison. It's about your journey and being really comfortable with where you're at during it.
Yeah. I think another thing that kind of jumped out at me too, like in just the reading, as far as like, this doesn't happen by chance. I think a lot of times we look at, again, you mentioned Instagram or whatever it is, and we see people and we're like, oh man, they're so lucky or whatever. But things like that just don't happen by chance. People really have to foster their skills and really grind and go after things. And like you said, I mean, I think part of it starts out with, and like the article kind of talks about, is sort of these principles, and really maybe just identifying initially like your purpose. And so kind of starting from that place, like I said, there's got to be a foundation there for this journey that has to take place. And it really is a journey. I think if people just think, hey, I'm going to wake up one morning and I'm going to be awesome and I'm going to have all this ability to whether it's help people or be successful and whatever, it just doesn't happen that way. But I mean, doesn't mean it can't happen, but it definitely is a journey. And so when you talk about those principles, there was four of them. So the first one's purpose. So do you want to just kind of talk a little bit about the purpose part of it?
Yeah. So I love helping people discover what their purpose is, right? And some people struggle with this because you're like, I don't know what my purpose is, because it seems so big.
Mhm.
But purpose is something that can evolve over time. But it is that ability to say, and I always ask people like three core questions, like, what are your core values? If you identify what values guide your daily actions, and that is a really great base of identifying what your purpose is. So, and I always tell people like, think about what your core values are, list five of them out. But then if you're feeling kind of geeky, send a text message to your friends and say, what do you think my core values are? Like, send it to five friends, family members, and see if it matches that list. So
Mhm.
you uncover what your values are, then you think about what your strengths are. Like, what are you really good at? And there's some great books that can help you do that. Like Strength Finders by the Gallup Group is one that everyone kind of loves. But it's identifying, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what you're good at work. It's like, what are your core strengths that show up in any type of environment you're in, work and family, in community. And then it's like, and then so you've done those two steps, then it's like, what do I want to be known for? So like, write down a few simple statements of, Stephen Covey talks about beginning with the end in mind. Like, how do you want to be described in your life? And if you can like look at those answers on a piece of paper, then you start to, put them together. Like, try to make a statement or a sentence that could start to articulate your purpose. and and recognize, like, some people take, this isn't like an exercise you do in 20 minutes, like, okay, I'm done. Some people will spend, years refining their purpose, because life changes, and all of a sudden you go from one kid to four kids or different jobs. And so, but one thing that's really clear, and the research is like so profound here, that if you dial into some of the most successful leaders in the world, they're able to tell you about their purpose, and more importantly, how it's evolved over time. And
Mhm.
so that's why the first step on this journey to awesome is to say, start to be grounded in your purpose of who you're trying to become and what you're trying to cause in the world. And it's okay if it's not clear today, but be intentional in creating it, so that you can be much more I was called much more intentional in the choices that you make, the job that you take, the place that you move to, or the decisions that you make. Does it link back to your purpose? And that's a really a great kind of North Star for all of us.
Yeah. And I think even just, like obviously from the leadership side and the business side that you work a lot in, I mean, even just kind of like bringing it down into like the mental health side where I'm at, and kind of working with patients and clients on an individual level, it's not really that much different. And I think if we're looking, for connections there, I mean, I ask the same question: what's your purpose of being here? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do in your time here? And do you have a clear understanding of that? And if you don't, you need to think about that, because that's like we're not going to really go anywhere if you don't really have a sense of purpose in what you're trying to do. Or again, even like you said, those things of who do you think you are? What are your strengths? What's going to bring you some, what do you, yeah, what are your strengths and what can you rely on as you go through this process of maybe working through some difficult things or trying to, find your way through something. Those are all important things, even from the mental health side. So they're great principles to have, regardless of where we're at or what we're trying to do. Having that sense of purpose is huge. So I appreciate that. And I think one of the things you even said was like having a personal purpose statement, to draw on. And like I said, it can evolve and kind of continue to grow through time as you add more to it, or if you maybe find out more about yourself and kind of what those core values or core strengths are. Like that's just something that keeps evolving for sure.
Absolutely. And to your point, it's such a great call out around, does this strengthen mental health like that? And let's be honest, that's not my area of expertise.
Mhm.
But in talking with you and other folks that are constantly coaching individuals, that's a grounding principle that no matter who we are or how successful we are, um, even our most successful leaders will have a coach, will have some sort of therapist or outside voice that helps them. Again, who are you trying to become? Like and so what I like about it is it's not like this just applies to a certain group of people, it applies to everybody.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great, and that's why I wanted to kind of just make sure shed light on that. That this isn't just talking about business and stuff. It's really a principle that goes throughout people and situations, regardless of where you're at. So the second principle you talk about is emotional intelligence. So you just want to kind of, I guess, define that or kind of see what or tell us what that is about for you and our journey to awesome.
Yeah, and I love this principle of emotional intelligence because emotional intelligence is really it's the ability to recognize your emotions and understand what your emotions are telling you, and then also how your emotions are affecting other people. And this is an important piece of the puzzle because oftentimes, if we're not aware of how we're interpreting information and then how we're coming across people, we'll miss the mark of, we'll say things that maybe are offensive, or we become a bull in a china shop just trying to do something, but we'll turn around and realize no one's behind us, no one was following us, because we just have done it in a way that turned everybody off. And so this emotional intelligent piece is about really each of us pausing and recognizing where is our own ability to consume information, worry about things we can or can't control, and then how does that then manifest itself in the way that we interact with others. And oftentimes we overlook this important piece of the puzzle. But there was an article written by Burson by Deloitte just recently about like enduring human capabilities. Like what are some things that humans have to have no matter what century they live in? Emotional intelligence is one of them, because it's such an important capability for us to have as humans so that we can be really intentional about how we interact with others.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And again, just kind of drawing the correlation, I think, I kind of run into so many different people, even, in the therapy side of things, where they've pushed away that side of them, or, they're not in touch with that part, and it's impacting them in so many different ways. And I think so many ways that they don't even often realize that it's impacting them or impacting others by not being in touch with it. So just getting them to learn and to try to even understand what their emotions mean, like you said, and being able to then communicate them in a more effective way is a huge part of that growth process for them. And it's a big thing for I guess, like you said, a lot of people in terms of just their impact, and like you said, just the way that they might be going about their day-to-day activities. If you have no sense of what that is for you, you're definitely not going to be able to understand how it's impacting others. So it is a huge part of things. And so, yeah, I really like that aspect of things. So the third principle you talk about is people. So what's the value of people in our journey to awesome?
Oh, I'm such a fan of this one. I think one of the quotes I use is "Alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much" by Helen Keller. And uh, in order for us to achieve our purpose, and in order for us to be really successful, we have to involve other people. And in order to be able to do that, you need to recognize, are the people in my life, are they helping me be better? Or are they actually causing me to not achieve what I'm trying to do? And one of the Benjamin Hardy writes a book, Willpower Doesn't Work, and it's such a great book. And he talks about the power of environment, and he does talk about people in that. And one of the things he mentions that I'm such a fan of is he alludes to this experiment with fleas, right? And it's a funny experiment because if you take fleas, they can jump really high. Well, if you put fleas in a jar and you put the lid on for 3 days, they only jump the height of the lid. Well, if you take the lid off, they still only jump the height of where the lid used to be. It's not until you take those fleas and put them with other fleas that are jumping higher that they then begin to jump high enough, or they begin to jump higher again. And I like this analogy because so often we will jump the height of people around us. And if we're not willing to expose ourselves to people that will challenge us to think different, or challenge us to think even bigger or bolder, and expose us to a different way of thinking, or a new set of skills, or a new set of way of accomplishing things, will always kind of stunt our growth. And so it's why I'm so passionate about like that third area of people, and how it makes such a big difference in our journey to awesome. And just to be really intentional, and to ask yourself, do I have the right people in my life that allow me to be awesome, challenge me to be different, and give me confidence to jump higher than I've jumped before? And it's something that we've lived in 3 different countries, and we've moved far too many times to count. But I think that's one of the things I love about moving, is the different people that you meet and how they help you on your journey.
Yeah, for sure. Well, really quick, Dr. Ben Hardy's been on the show. We talked about his book, Personality Isn't Permanent, and that's another great book. So I appreciate the reference to him. I thought a lot about this when I read the article. I thought about this principle of people, and even again, kind of my own dynamic, and not to, but just to kind of put it in a more personal perspective. I just think that this one, like you said, it's an exciting part of it, because I think there is so much value in the people that we surround ourselves with. And I just think, and sometimes it's not always even just like being able to have people. I mean, obviously it's people that you feel can influence you or push you, like you said, but it's also just the type of people that you're around and what they're doing. Like, I feel a sense of gratitude even for, say, yourself, or for, when we were all kind of doing our college thing and Danny Balderson was there and whatever. It's like just people that are going for better things in their life, that have a sense of like, I'm not just going to be satisfied with the status quo of kind of like just, getting through high school and kind of getting a job, but really pushing yourselves to greater things. And so I've always tried to do that within myself, surround myself with people that have that desire to be great, or to be better, or to improve the world, whatever it is. And I think as you do that, you just feel that sense of like, yeah, I can do this. And maybe sometimes it can be intimidating to surround yourself with people that are in that boat. But for the most part, those people want to help you. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you be successful, because they know within themselves there's room for everybody to be successful. And I think that's something that sometimes I think we look in the world and we're like, oh, like those people have the success, and so there's no more, but there's room for us all to have that success. And maybe that's a little bit of a different tangent, but I really do like the idea of the people thing, and just our ability to put ourselves around people that will help us get to where we want to go. And that's such a critical part. I know like I said, I'm grateful for the people I've been able to surround myself with. I know it's made a big difference in my own life. And I think, if we look at kind of where we're at and the people that are around us right now, I think sometimes the hardest thing is that maybe when we look at that circle, do we need to make a change, right? Because sometimes we might have to make a change and do something different, because maybe those people aren't going to get us to where we want to go, or they're not going to help us be the kind of person or achieve the kind of potential that we would like to do. And that can be a hard thing.
It can. And it sometimes, it's not like you're trying to like ignore people or exclude
Right.
somebody from your life,
Right.
although sometimes you might.
Yeah.
Right, because because I think what happens is, make no mistake, you become a product of your environment, and the people, how they're behaving are around you. There's no way to get around that. Like, it's just a hard line formula. And so I think that's why it's part of the process in this article. It's like, take a hard look at the people that you're surrounded with, and are they helping you? And I was, are they helping you jump higher? And if they're not, doesn't mean, maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. It just means that they
Yeah.
might not be aligned to your purpose. And I think that's where it comes back to alignment of purpose. And it helps you start to realize it doesn't make them bad.
Yeah.
It just might mean that they have a different value. They might have a different purpose. So great. It means that that will allow you to determine the amount of time you put with those individuals versus the amount of time you put with somebody else. And that's where I love that you start with purpose, and everything starts to kind of fall from there. It helps you
Yeah.
make strategic choices.
Right. And just kind of building off that, I know, going back to a little bit of a high school reference. I mean, perfect example for me. I have some great friends from high school. And one of the hardest things for me to do at, like, just when I was outside, when I just got out of high school, was I had some great friends and I love them. Like you said, they're not bad people, but my sense of purpose and what I wanted to do with my life and their sense of purpose was different. So at some point we had to part ways. We had to kind of I had to go in a different direction because like I said, our purposes just weren't aligned. And it wasn't because they were bad people. They're great people. They just had a
And that,
different purpose, right?
and that's the beauty of where you get to, that's the emotional intelligence piece. All of a sudden you
Mhm.
get to, like, get through this and be like, oh my gosh, this isn't about me comparing to anybody
Yeah.
else. It just means you're living your purpose and I'm living mine. And that might mean it intersects or it doesn't. And I love that bit about that, because it helps take emotion out of the equation of whether you're judging somebody, because it's
Yeah.
not about that. And I
Right.
think that's when you get to that piece, I think you can really kind of ensure that you're not making somebody feel bad, but also just being a little bit more intentional around saying, okay, here's how I move forward with, the different individuals that come in or out of my life.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up that word judgment. I think that that's the thing. And I think that was the thing I struggled with even at a younger age, was I felt like by me doing that, I was maybe casting some kind of judgment. And that's not really what it was about. Obviously, when you're 19, it's hard to kind of, like, you're just kind of learning the world, but that's what it felt like. But it's, like I said, it's really not about that. It's just about, kind of moving towards your own sense of purpose. And that's, sometimes that just happens. So anyway, that's a great one. So I love the people aspect of it, obviously, and you do too. So, and then the fourth principle you talk about is focus. So just want to kind of tell us a little bit about how that applies in this journey to awesome.
Yeah, and this one I love because this ability to focus, especially in today's world, is so hard, right? I mean, like I think in my article I reference, like, how many times do you click on your cell phone and unlock it? Like, some people will do it up to 200 times a day. Like, why do you need to do that? Um, and so, in the ability to become awesome in the journey of fulfilling our purpose, it is this ability to demonstrate high level focus of what's going to get you there. And 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 so I think there's something about, how do we remove things in our lives that distract us from achieving our purpose? And this ability to focus um, becomes a critical piece of the puzzle that, again, we sometimes, like, it would have been easy to write down, oh, I'm going to write down goals. Like, goals are super important to becoming awesome. Well, it is, but if you can't focus, you're never going to achieve a goal. And so it's why I focus on, as we're talking about, that fourth pillar becomes this ability to say, as you've now articulated your purpose and who you're trying to become, how do you now keep focused on doing that? What is the daily habits that are going to help you do that? And then how do you remove some of the daily habits that are keeping you unfocused from getting there? And so that's, for me, is this. There's loads of tips and tricks around this. But the reality of it is, it's finding what works for you, so that on a regular basis, now we're all human, so you never have 100% days, but it's staying focused more of the time than it is less of the time.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring that up, about that, like the tips and tricks or whatever, because I was working with a kid yesterday And his 14-year-old kid probably has a little bit of a video game addiction or whatever. And he was asking me about like kind of what I thought would be helpful as far as like a strategy to kind of keep him more focused so he doesn't distract himself or whatever. And it was interesting, and I wasn't even thinking about it until just right now. But what I really brought him back to was like, I was like, well, what's your purpose? What is your purpose? Kind of like, again, that founding thing. Like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to be good at school or do you not want to be good at school? Because if you want to be good at school, then obviously when you allow yourself to get distracted in video games and then you're fall behind in your work, that's not, that's not going to help your purpose. But hey, maybe you don't want to be good at school. I don't know. I don't know what your purpose is or what you want to
Hmm.
do. But I think even when we look at that focus part, again, like you said, aligning ourselves and knowing what that purpose is, it's like, well, what am I doing right now? Is it going to help me towards that purpose? And we were kind of talking before we started recording, you know, when we're trying to fulfill our purpose, there's a lot of work that goes in and it takes a lot of effort. I mean, I do a podcast, Spencer does a podcast, Small Things Make a Big Difference. Check it out. It's on
It's
iTunes as
amazing.
well and
Check it
everything.
out.
It is amazing. Yes, yes. But we were just saying like how these things that we're doing, it's like another job, I mean, and it takes a lot. And we both have families and we both have other things that we like to do. And so the notion of focus, it's like to do those things, to do your job, to try to make a difference in the world. It's a lot of effort. And I'm guilty. When I read your article, I was like, yeah, I probably pick up my phone way too much and do whatever. So I feel like I even have a lot of wasted time, even though, I still feel like I'm trying to do a lot of different things. So just that notion of focus, it definitely, it takes effort, but I think having that purpose and knowing what that is definitely helps with pushing us towards that.
Yeah. I'll maybe give one last thought is,
Yeah.
in our journeys of doing these podcasts, you meet really cool people, and one of my friends, Scott O'Neill, is the CEO of the 76ers. He talks about a concept of that helps him focus on what's most important. He's like, when I go to work, I sprint to work. I love it. But when I'm done work and I'm going to hang out with my family, I sprint from work and I sprint towards my family. And he treats every area of his life like that, so that he's able to focus in the moment on that thing. But when he's done, he runs from it and embraces the next area that he's trying to focus on. And that's for me, was such a good visual, right? Around,
Yeah.
okay, I'm now shifting from work to hanging out with my son for the next 30 minutes. Sprint away from work and just get it on your mind and be all in for the next 30 minutes here. And then you're sprinting to the next thing. And so, I think that's how I really have implied this focus principle is I'm sprinting to what's important, and then, but focusing on that for a certain period of time and then leaving it.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that's a great thing. It's interesting, like when you're talking, you always have these flashes of like kind of your own thoughts in your own life. And I think that, doing more of that for all of us would be great. And I just think, yeah, just sprinting towards it. And then now that's my focus and that's where I'm going to put my energy. That's a great, I think, thought for us in terms of that. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So, all right. So any other things as far as like this journey to awesome, any other tips? And I know those four principles are great. I think that they pretty much speak for themselves as far as like what we can do, but any final things that you would
You
add
know,
about that?
uh, I think that I'll leave two thoughts.
Okay.
Is one is like, be patient with yourself, because it it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens for people that are consistent. And then you said the other thing. Sometimes we'll look at somebody and be like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. Like, it happened so well for them, or it came so easy. One thing that I've learned, and I'm doing research right now with leaders all over the world. Every leader, every successful people has a grind. Like, it has not been easy for them. And most times you'll never see what went behind in order to get them to where they are. And so it's almost like, recognize that the journey to awesome is never going to be without hardship and without like real effort, but that if you can keep focused on your purpose and these things that we talked about, it is so worth it. and and so I think those are the two things that I would also say is be patient with yourself and recognize that it is a process, and it's okay if it's not working out 100% of the time. It's going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And what I would add just to that in my own thoughts is just the fact that, within that process and within kind of being patient with yourself, the journey to awesome and being awesome doesn't mean that there hasn't been failure along the way. I think sometimes we're so afraid
Yeah.
of failure. And so we're so afraid of what failure might mean to us. And all failure means is just that it's just a learning tool. It's just something that can help us along the path to being awesome, because now we have that experience to add to our tool belt and to be able to learn from. And I even think about like whatever it is, I mean, just getting out. I think sometimes we just overthink things too much, just getting out and doing it. I know when I started this podcast, I was doing a challenge from another business mentor. And basically it was just like, just do it, just start,
Hmm.
and don't worry about sucking. And when he said that, when he said, don't worry about sucking, I was like, that was the permission that I needed. Cause I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to be good at this at the start. And I don't even go back and listen to my first podcast because I know they were probably just terrible. And my mic was terrible. Now I got a nice fancy mic or whatever. But so all those things, but it's just like when he said, just give yourself permission to suck. It's like, yeah, because it's a process. Like it's just about, like you said, I really like the idea about being consistent, showing up for yourself, just continuing to do it regardless of whatever the highs and the lows are going to be there. But in the end, with that sense of purpose and with all those other things that we've talked about today, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. And again, getting there doesn't mean you're going to be the CEO of the 76ers, which I thought that was nice how you just kind of slipped that in there, like, oh, my friend, the CEO of the 76ers. So we'll be talking about maybe tickets later or something like that. But
people, right? People.
Right. You know him, I know you, we got to make a connection there. All right, so that's good to know. But just like it may not be that's where you're headed, but whatever that influence is or whatever it is that your purpose is, you're going to get there. So anyway, there was one other thing I was going to talk about, but I think we'll skip it. But I will just mention, just for people to look for, because I thought it was a great article. You wrote an article about empathy and kind of being shocked into empathy. And I thought there was some great things in it. So if you get a chance, look that up. Dr. Spencer Holt, I'll say that for because it was under Dr. Spencer Holt. That was the article. And or it was about empathy and shocking yourself into empathy. And there were some great things in there as far as how we can bring that into our lives and into, obviously, from your perspective, the leadership dynamic as well, too. So anyway, but you are awesome, and I appreciate you being on the show. And I think there's been some great things for people to kind of take in and be able to, digest and hopefully apply to their lives.
What a treat for me, Ryan. So thank you for having me on here, but also thank you for doing these, right? Like it's an opportunity to have people think out loud, and then hopefully also give other people incredible courage to sort through their own feelings, but to eventually be awesome. So what a fun opportunity. So great to see you again. Thank you for letting me be on.
All right, thank you.